last week we started looking at this final Mizmar of the 7 Mizmorim of Kabbalah Shabbos, leading up to L'Chadaydi. And in this Mizmar, just very quickly, to review last week, we looked at the first 4 stanzas as being like a ladder that you can climb, right? And we looked at every single one of the lines, and we learned to what our kavanah is supposed to be very quickly. We said, Mizmor L'David, this is how it begins, Kol Hashem b'nei Elim. And at this point we said, you're in the Olam of Asiya. You're in the physical world with our identity, our perceptions, our experience of reality, and this is where we begin. Then we climb up a level. Kol Hashem kavod va'oz. Now we begin to relate to Hashem. We're aware that there's a Hashem. There's a world, and then there's the Creator. There's Hashem. And we want to give to this being called Hashem. We want to connect with Him. The level beyond that, Kol Hashem kvod shemai, is the recognition that Hashem's presence pervades the earth. We call that the world of Beriah. So you go from Asiya, physical, to Yitzira, and then to Beriah, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we can feel that there's a spiritual presence of the divinity within the world. And it's not just that there's a Hashem who created the world, but this world is suffused with Elokus, and you can begin to perceive that if we have that intention. And then finally, the 4th level is Ishtachvul Hashem B'Hadras Kodesh. Total bowing down, which we said means bittul, means the recognition that at that stage there is no world, right? Ein oid milvade kepshutei mamish. Thanks so much for coming. Great to see you. Ein oid milvade. At that stage, done. There's no world at all, right? And we're able to really enter into a state of total bittul, perceive ourselves as swimming within godliness, where it's not just that there's spirituality within the vessels of physicality, but the vessels of physicality are themselves spiritual. And that's this awareness that we can come to, that from Hashem's perspective, everything is Elokus, everything is godliness. This is the 4-rung ladder of the beginning of Mizmor L'David. So now we're going to take a look at the 7 times that the word Kol, voice, appears in this Mizmar. Okay, so let's go back into the Bayam Darkecha, which we'll continue from last week, and take a look at the bottom of the page where it begins with the letter Vav. And the tzaddik says like this, HaKavana Hashniya b'Mizmor L'David. So now that we have that first kavana of this kind of meditation on the first 4 stanzas, now let's take a look at the rest of it. And he says like this, HaKavana Hashniya hi, the second kavana, the second intention, b'milim Kol Hashem. Every time we say again, Kol Hashem, Kol Hashem, Kol Hashem, 7 times. See, he says, Ki ini oimrim b'mizmar zeh, in this particular Mizmar Tehillim, we have Zayin pa'amim Kol Havaya. 7 times these words, the voice of Hashem. And this relates to the 7 lower midos, right? Which are embodied and personified in the Shiva Roim, or the 7 Ushpizin. We have Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, and David, right? The 7 Ushpizin. And all of these tzaddikim were kalim for midos, right? So of course Avram is the midah of Chesed, Yitzchak is Gevura, Yaakov is Tiferes, Moshe and Aaron is called Netzach and Hoid, like victory, very like intense. Netzach means also endurance, right? Lasts forever. Hoid is submission. That's Aaron. Oyev Shalom, Bereid Shalom. Yosef is the midah of Yisoid, which is his skashrus. And then finally, David HaMelech, of course, is called Melech. We discussed this many times because that's the midah of Malchus, right? David HaMelech. So here he says that as we're coming into Shabbos, Mamash, or about to sing L'Chadaydi, Shabbos is coming in. He says we can use this Mizmar as another kind of mindfulness practice to be able to awaken within ourselves all of these midas, pasuk by pasuk. In so doing, by the way, obviously, when we focus on these midas, we also want to focus on the physical part of the body that these midas relate to, right? So we have these 7 traits, and these 7 traits function in our spiritual, emotional strata of our existence, but they also become embodied in our physical form, right? And so chesed becomes the right hand, and that's why most people have a very powerful right hand. They're righties, right? I happen to have 2 kids who are lefties, but I'm a righty and my wife is a righty. We don't know where it comes from, but right hand is chesed, right? Right. Left hand is gevura, is shvach, is weak by most people, right? That's gevura. It's held back. It's restrained. Tiferes is the torso. Netzach and Hoid are the legs. Yisoid is the bris. And Malchus, let's say Malchus could be the mouth, right? Is the peh. Also the atar of the bris, but for more practical purposes, it's the peh. And so this is a really important thing. If we can say this Mizmor slowly, and we can be mechaven right now, and he's going to go through all of this, and we have a chart also where we can see on the next page, we can mindfully activate all these different parts of me to say, Rabban Shalom, I'm about to enter into Shabbos. I want to come in activated, alive. Because it's so easy at the end of the week. Everybody's so tired. You could come into Shabbos, mamash, wiped out and dead. And it's such a chaval. Shabbos is the most exciting time of the week. It's the most energized time of the week. So we want to make sure that all of us are present. And this is a great meditation and a mindfulness practice to be able to activate all these parts of ourselves, both body and soul. So here he begins. V'yechavin ba'amirasai. The first thing we should be mechaven with our amira, Kol Hashem al hamayim. That's the first one. The voice of Hashem is upon the waters. He says our kavana here is to midas hachesed. L'kabel b'nafshay ar chadash. We should have in mind that our souls would like to receive this new light. Shal midas hachesed she'inyan ha'ava. We want to awaken our love. We want to awaken our compassion, self-compassion, compassion on others, love toward Hashem, love toward creation, love toward the world. And a person should think and contemplate in his heart. This is what we're focusing on. We would like to access brand new levels of love for Hashem. When we teichse, and from amidst this experience, la'avas Torah, the Yisrael, right? These three loves that are all connected: the love of Hashem, the love of Am Yisrael, and the love of the Torah. This is what we should have in mind when we say Kol Hashem al Hamayim. And of course, Mayim is Chesed, right? Avram Avinu says, Yukachna ma'at Mayim. Avram Avinu is connected to Mayim. The Gemara tells us that Ma Mayim yardi mimakam gavaya lamakam namuch. Water naturally flows from a high place to a low place, which is what Chesed is, right? The one who has gives to the one who has not, right? And that's what water is. That's what water is. Okay, so that's midah number one. V'chein b'shar kol amidas, and the same is true for the rest of them. Kol avaya, but koyach, what's koyach? Strength, power is gevura. Yechavin b'midas ha'gevura. This a person should have in mind, the midah of severity, of harshness, she'inyana yira. Which means now we want to awaken, and of course, like you can't, if you say it too quickly, it's just like flashes of light, if anything. But if we can take a minute on each pasuk and go through it slowly, then we can give ourselves space to allow this to happen, right, and to flourish within us. So that's the first thing. We say, Kol Hashem al hamayim. It's the midah of chesed, avas Hashem. Then we say, Kol Hashem ba'koyach, and that's gevura. V'yechazik b'liboy, to strengthen within his heart, as midas hayira, the midah of awe. B'kol avaya b'hadar, the third one is yechaven l'kabel kinyan chadash b'midas hatiferes. What does it mean, tiferes? He says, she'inyana devekus ba'Hashem yisbarach. That's total connection with Hashem. Tiferes is harmony. We want to have harmony with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We want to give of ourselves, right? A person who hugs another person doesn't hug their leg or their arm. They hug their body, right? Their torso. That's where connection is. And we can feel, and again, you can even somatically, physically get involved to like move your body around a little bit. You know, your chest out to say, Rabban Shalom, I want to give myself to you fully. I want to open myself up. It's a very vulnerable position to hug, right? Because the opposite of hugging is what people do when they feel threatened. They close their body. If a person's feeling nervous, you'll see their arms are folded, because subconsciously they're trying to protect their vital organs, right? Which is the heart, which is the aver sheneshama tliyaba. But when a person is able to put their hands out like this, and this is why by Hasidim you see during davening that there were physical motions, because it meant something. It meant something. By moving the body, we understood, because the human is so deep that we're not just a body, we're thereby being ma'orer neshama things. So to be able during Kabbalah Shabbos, we say Kol Hashem b'hadar, which is tiferes. You let your arms loose, and you can lean forward and say, Rabban Shalom, I want to give myself to you. I want to be totally open with you, totally vulnerable, unfolded, as it were, before you. Okay, so that's the third midah. That's Kol Hashem b'hadar. Now, Kol Havaya Shover Arazim is midah number 4, and that's going to be the midah of Netzach. Shover Arazim means to break down the cedar trees. Very powerful energy. Kol Hashem Shover Arazim. Thanks for coming. A tremendously powerful energy. We prepared a seat right there for you. Right? Kol Hashem Shover Arazim. That's the midah of Netzach, which means this tremendous energy of just a force, a tremendous force. What kind of force? So he says, Yechaben b'midas hanetzach, on the other side of the page, top right column, very top, she'inyana koyach ha'akshanas va'anitzachain, which means we are activating within us this capacity to never give up hope. Which means that even though we may feel that during the week, whatever happens to us during the week, we're human beings. We spoke about by Shalosh Shuddas, right? We're not malachim, and we go through what we go through. We come into Shabbos and we say, right now, I have the chance to start again. And I do that when I'm activating this midah of netzach, which means I'm going to make it to the finish line when I say Kol Havaya Shoiver Arazim. And we can feel that inside of us. Do we have what it takes to be Shoiver Arazim, to break down anything in my way? It's like a person with a machete, like trying to get through a forest. We do. We have that capacity. On Shabbos specifically, we get that strength. And we can have in mind, Kol Hashem Shoiver Arazim. The next one, Kol Havaya Choitzev Lahavas Eish Yichavan Lekabelas Midas HaHoid. This is like the glowing fire of Hoid, which literally means like Hoid is like a beautiful glow. She'inyana Hoida ala emes. What does it mean here? To come to the awareness Shahakol Zarak Hashem Yisbarach. Hoid can mean glory. It could also mean like to admit, Hoida'a. To really recognize and come to the total vulnerable expression that it's not all me. There's our Kodesh Baruch Hu in the world. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is running things. See how powerful this is. We review within one Mizmar, as part of Kabbalah Shabbos, the ultimate foundations of a spiritually activated relationship with Hashem. Step by step by step by step. If a person says nothing else during Kabbalah Shabbos but this, but does it consciously, that's Echad HaMarbe ve'Echad HaMambet U'Vad She'echavin Libel HaShamayim. It's incredibly powerful to do this. Mamish incredibly powerful. I'll tell you that this past Kabbalah Shabbos, I did this thing with the first four, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. I don't know if any of you tried it out, but it was very special. So now I'm making your davening even longer, right? So now we have even more, kavanas. But it's good. It's so deep. It's because this is what Yiddishkeit is meant for. It's not just like we always say. It's not a bunch of liturgy that Hashem wants us to mindlessly, just get out. It's meant to be a tool to reveal the neshama and give it the opportunity to connect in a very deep way. And Hashem gave us a privilege as a chabura that we get to not miss out, which is very special. So here we come finally, we're coming to the end of a Kol Havaya Yachil Midbar. Here we come to this point when we say that a Kodesh Baruch Hu makes the desert tremble. So over here, Yechaven Lekabel Kinyan Emes, the Midas HaYisoid. Here, it's an interesting kavanah. Again, I just want to point out that for all of these midos, there are any number of interpretations, because each one has multifaceted. That Yisod is many things. It's Shmir Sabris. It's Iskashrus. It's many things, right? So he's choosing to focus on one element of it, which is like a genuine bond. Which means letting go of any ulterior motives. I'm not in shul because I'm expected to be here. I'm here because as a human being, I feel that I want something out of life. I want something. I'm looking for something. I'm seeking something. That's why all of us are here in this room, particularly. There are many other shiurim that you could have gone to. And I can't express my gratitude enough to each one of you that you came to be a part of this. It's a very special thing. It's a very unique thing. So to express that Friday night to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when we say these words in Mizmor L'David, Kol Hashem Yachil Midbar. Hashem, I genuinely want to connect to you. Kol Havaya Yechoil Ayalos. And then finally at the very end, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes these ayalos, these animals tremble. Yechavin Shu B'midas HaMalchus. Now we have in mind that this is the final midah. The kan, what should our kavanah be here? Again, there could have been many different intentions to have, because these words mean a lot of things. But the one thing he says, what should we have in mind when we say these words Friday night? The kan mechavnin shuv as kol hamidas hakdosh. Now it's like a quick sikum, a quick review, because like we've learned, that's what Malchus is. It's a vessel for everything. It's the levana, it's the moon that reflects the light of the sun with all of its energies, all of its rays. So now we go back and we review. Let's do it quickly, yeah? Chesed is Avas Hashem. Gevura is Yirah Shamayim. Tiferes is, like we said with the torso, I'm giving myself to you, Rebbeinu Shalom. That's Tiferes. Thanks so much for coming. Tiferes is that. Netzach is, I can break down all the cedar trees, everything in my way. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it on my level. There's hope for me. Hoid, we said, is admitting that Hashem is in control of my life ultimately. Yisoid, we said, is seeking spirit. And then finally, Malchus is just everything. Malchus might see is to say, okay, I've reviewed all of these different traits and all these different parts of me, and now I'm ready to actualize them. A person should have in mind, when we say Kol Hashem Yecholel Ayolos, that in this moment, all of those latent potential energies within me are now being revealed. And ki'ilu, if like a person was able to see another person's spiritual aura, what they would see is their entire body activated. The entire body activated. Now we're ready for l'chadaydi. You see? Something else. Now we're ready for l'chadaydi. Lit up, illuminated. Every part of the person. Every part of the person. He's ready to bring them out into action, believe, with a heart that's filled. And isn't that what we're after, right? All of us. We're after a heart that's filled. Far too many empty hearts, far too many broken hearts, far too many leaking hearts. And we want hearts that are full, overflowing. Full to the point that we have so much in our hearts that we want to give over to other people. This is one of the ways to get there. Kavanas Elu, he says, with these intentions, anu zaychin lehismale ba'ar hamidas hakadoshim. We merit to be filled up with the light of all of these midos. The kasher adam mali b'chol madrigas habitel. When a person has already gone through the 4 rungs of the ladder that we learned last week of Havul Hashem, going from something to something from something, next level, to something from nothing, and then nothing, like we said, deeper and deeper and deeper into this understanding that everything is Hashem. There is no world. There is, like we said, there is no person next to me to talk to. There is no anything. There's just bittul. I don't even have a mouth. Everything is bittul, is still, is silent, is just melting back into the ocean of divinity. A person can have that kavana. We come into Kabbalah Shabbos on that level. Thanks for coming. A person has that machshava, and then in that place of everything is Hashem, I begin to activate within myself my whatever consciousness I still have that is being machabin, that everything is Hashem, all of the different midos that Hashem has within His oneness, because these midos are all rooted in Hashem. So that's like the biggest yichud with Hashem there is, surrounded and filled. Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Didn't Rav Nachman say something about with your bittul? If you're too bittul, the neshama can fly.
Sure. It's always got to be what's called a ratzai v'shoif, right? Sometimes there's running, sometimes there's returning, right? So the chiddush is that at this particular point in Kabbalah Shabbos, we want to go up to that place. We're going to learn that l'chadaydi is a different kavana, but just to be able, it doesn't mean stay there forever. A person is not meant to just have their eyes closed, and Rabbi Nachman actually says that when you close your eyes and your mouth, it's a very deep thing. That's bittul, right? We're not supposed to stay there forever. Hashem wants us to live as human beings, but there are shining moments in time where, like a phone charger, it's not always supposed to be plugged in, but there are times that it needs to get a charge, and then it separates again. So Mizmor L'David is one of the times that we get a charge, if we can have these kavanas, absolutely. But it's a very, very important point. Okay, so he says, when now we're filled with this madriga of bittul, b'chol amidas hakdashim hu kli muchan. Now he says the person is a ready vessel. L'kabbalas ara Shabbos. Now we're Shabbosik. This is like the true experience of like changing our clothes l'kavod Shabbos, because a person could change their clothes and they're the exact same person. So on the outside it looks, now I look Shabbosik, but this is how to become Shabbosik. This is how to become, like literally on a body and a soul level, I'm different. I'm a new garments. Physical and spiritual and emotional garments. V'loimar, now I can say, Ba'ichala. So deep. Right? To get to that level, now I can say, now I'm ready. Ba'ichala. Unbelievable. Let's quickly review that, and then we'll see a very, very, very beautiful, deep teaching with the time that we have. Let's take a look at this this chart here. Okay, very quickly, just to review. And it's a good thing also. You can I think, yeah, you can cut it out, and you can put it in your pocket and take it out. Put it in your siddur if you have one, and be mechaven in shul Friday night. Okay, so let's go through it step by step. Okay, so the first one is Kol Hashem al Hamayim, Kel HaKavod Hirim, Hashem al Mayim Rabim. We said it's chesed. Love for Hashem, the Torah, and Am Yisrael. That's what we're supposed to have in mind and in heart. Kol Hashem HaKoyach, that is yira, awe of Hashem. Kol Hashem Bahadar is, like we said, is the harmony of a close relationship with Hashem. Kol Hashem Shover Arazim, and that whole thing, Vaishaber Hashem is Azay Alvanan, Vaikidum Kama Egel, Alvanan Visurim, Kama Ben Reimim. He didn't bring the rest of the psukim, but that whole segment is supposed to be, like we said, Netzach, reinforcing our commitment to Hashem with great force and holy stubbornness. And I would also add in there hope, right? Even though no matter how many obstacles you run into during the week, Shabbos is an infusion, the realization that however far you think you've gone, Shabbos reconnects you to the understanding that you're exactly where you need to be. And the holiness that you have inside of you is kavua. That's what Shabbos is. It's the point of holiness in us that doesn't go away, that cannot go away. That's always there. Kol Hashem choitzav l'abis eish, we said is the midah of hoid, recognizing the ultimate truth. Everything is from Hashem, and this is also, I threw in giving thanks for that. Right? Hoda'ah. This means to admit, but it also means to think. Kol Hashem Yachel Midbar, Yachel Hashem Midbar Kadesh, is binding ourselves and every part of the physical world with Hashem. And then finally, Kol Hashem Yichol L'Yalos, Vayachsaf Ya'aris, which I looked up and means to strip, like he strips the forest of its bark. Vayachsaf means to strip bare. Uveichale Kulei Aimer Kavod. And there's a lot of Kabbalistic hints here, but I don't want to muddy it a little bit, or the opposite of muddy, saginar, make it too bright. Heichal, just for those that remember what we learned previously, Heichal is the gematria of Aleph, Dal, and Nun, Yud, and Aleph, Dal, and Nun, Yud is the midah of Malchus, right? And so that fits very nicely, that this is literally what we're referring to. Uvehechalai kulai oimer, we said that Malchus is connected to Amira, to speech. Not getting into it, covered. That's the glory of Hashem. Okay, so now turn the page and let's take a look at this short but incredibly, incredibly glorious and deep teaching from the tzaddik of Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook, Zechus Yagan Aleinu, in his Siddur Oles Re'iyah. So he says like this, listen to this. It's a very, very deep thing and a big chizuk. And it's a privilege to learn it with you. So thank you for being here. Says the Eligat Tzaddik, Kol Hashem ala mayim. Hashem's voice is upon the waters. He quotes the Gemara in Brachas, that the Gemara in Brachas, somebody mentioned this last week, Hani Shiva de Shabta keneged mi. The Gemara asks, why do we have 7 brachas in the Shemana Esrei of Shabbos? Where does this come from? 7 blessings, why? The Gemara says, Amar Rav Tachlifta ben Shaul. Rabbi Tachlifta ben Shaul says, it's keneged Shiva koilos sha'amar David alamayim. It is keneged, it's connected with these 7 times that David HaMelech said Kol in the Mizmor that we just learned. 7 times Kol Hashem, 7 brachas in Shemana Esrei. So on the face of it, like what's the connection? There's no overt connection in this Mizmor to Shabbos at all. There's no connection between this and the brachas of Shemana Esrei or Tefillah. Why? What's the connection here? What's the connection? So Rav Kook wants to examine this. And he says the following. Listen to every word. There was nobody like it in his manner of expression. He says, B'chalal habriya, when it comes to the entirety of existence, kol ikar hashlema sheba, it appears that the completion of creation, nira, becomes manifest, b'matzav hakiyum, habinyan v'hatikun. When things are fixed, constructed, rectified, right? And that's when we look at a building and we see that it's built. We say, okay, this is the completion of this building. It's done. It's finished. It's standing strong. Avol b'charbanos, but he says when things become destroyed, eina nira shum chachma v'tachlis. You walk by a building that's totally abandoned and it's crumbling and nobody, there's no maintenance and walls are falling down. You say that This is not representative of the world's binyan, of the world's completion. So he says so deep. And we need good ears to listen beyond the surface of what he's actually saying in his historical context, without getting into that now. But when we see as erech hametzius v'hashlemus shebetoitzoisehem shel hacharbanos, he says when we're able to develop the eyes to see the value of the reality and the completion that is a result of things that break, even though when they're broken, we don't see anything good or anything positive or anything constructed or anything good, anything positive. He says when we develop eyes to be able to see that things develop along a causal process, step by step by step by step, there's a process to things. So he says, Anu makirim behem es chachmasei ha'elyoina shel gedoil ha'etza yizbarach. We're able to recognize an even deeper kind of wisdom. Listen to how deep this is. An even deeper kind of wisdom than the wisdom that we see in a building that's built. I'm using that as a mashal. If we can perceive the superhuman insight that decreed that this thing now should be broken. And he says, this is the pasuk in Tehillim, L'chu chazu. It says, come and see mefalos Hashem, the wonders of Hashem. Asher sam shamos ba'aretz. When do you see the wonders of Hashem? When there's devastation on the earth. So think about how deep it is. When you see things that work, that means that human beings decided that this is something that should work, and they put in effort and time, and Hashem wants this. This is called Yishuv Ha'olam, Lo'ila To'u Barala Shabbos Yitzar. Hashem put us in this world to develop and to try to make something of our lives and to try to go ahead and to take step after step and make tikkun. That's what we're here for. That's absolutely what we're here for. But what happens in life when things break? What happens in life when there's dysfunction? What happens in life when things don't appear to be proceeding, quote unquote, according to plan? So there are two perspectives. On the one hand, we look at it and we say, wow, this thing is totally unattractive. It's totally, apparently challenging and useless and doesn't seem to serve a constructive purpose at all. That's one perspective. The other perspective says that when our understanding of constructive purposes falls away, and we still believe that Hashem runs the world, then it turns out that revealed in the difficulty and the challenge and the pain of this process is actually a more glorious chachma than the chachma that exists when things work out. You see this? Because we believe that Kol Mad Avid Rachmana L'Tav Avid. And I would never have caused this thing to happen in my life. With my chachma, but it happened. It happened despite my best efforts to make sure that things are going the way that things should go. Do you know what just happened in this moment? HaKadosh Baruch Hu peeked in and he says, things are not going your way, but they're going my way. L'chu chazu mefalos Hashem. Come and see the wonders of Hashem. Dafka asher sam shamis ba'aretz. When there's devastation, when there is pain, when there is maybe even tragedy. That's a different perspective. Let's see how he develops this. Says Rav Kook, such a deep taich, it's unbelievable. Kinegdam Amar David Shiva Koilis Alamai. He says it was in relation to these kinds of wonders that don't look good, that we can't point it and say, Eza Tov Hashem. We can't sing and dance Ashreinu Mantov Chalkeinu. Things fall apart. David HaMelech, says Rav Kook, consecrated this Mizmor about those chasadim, those hidden chasadim. Because look at the whole Mizmor. Did you ever see such a Mizmor? About Hashem, who's supposed to be the whole thing is about breaking and scaring and fire and trembling. The whole thing is about pain. The whole Mizmor. Think about all the destructive forces that show up in this short span of the however many psukim of this short mizmar. That seem to upset the functionality of creation. They seem to get in the way. Anuroyim Yad Hashem, says David HaMelech. No, look deeper. That's where you see the Yad Hashem most. V'shoymim Kol Hashem. That's where you hear the voice of God most. Question is, have we developed the kli, the receptivity, to be able to tune into that channel of the way that things are playing out? Says Rav Kook, the whole Mizmor talks about devastation, and the whole Mizmor speaks about the voice of Hashem. He says these are not a stira, that it's one thing, it's not a contradiction. Hainu hach. B'koyach uv'hadar. This is how you hear the voice of Hashem, with strength and with glory. Kol Hashem shoiver harazim. Hashem is breaking down forests. You think about tornadoes. You think about hurricanes. You think about destroyed property. You think about displaced lives. This is what we're talking about. Beheder, a lack, a void, v'churban, and a destruction. Kol Hashem choitziv laves eish. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's voice. Where is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's voice? In some sweet, wonderful thing that happens? No. Wildfires that are destroying acres and acres and acres of crops that were meant to feed people. What kind of chachma is it? It's a big chachma to plow a field and to plant a field and to water a field and to grow a field and to reap a field and to crop and to make all the wheat into things that we say Amoitzi lechem and arts. That's a chachma. It's a chachma that a wildfire out of control, started maybe even by nature, goes ahead and destroys everything that human beings work to build. That's a chachma. Says David HaMelech, Kol Hashem choitziv lahaves eish. It may be a bigger chachma than the chachmas we think are readily perceptible to us. Zoyos v'ri'idos ha'aretz, the trembling, the shaking of the earth. And then at the end we talk about the absolute destruction of the world. Hashem lamabel yashav. We talk about Hashem's wiping out all that there is. And over here we're talking about creation, but I want each of us to focus on our own lives and the tornadoes that we have inside, and the hurricanes we have inside, and the wildfires that we experience inside. And I'm talking about in our own emotions, and our own circumstances, and traumas, and difficult experiences, and pain that we feel. Hashem lamabel yashav, when we feel like everything's been wiped away. Mizgale goydel hatachlis. Somehow, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tachlis is being revealed, and that's why we end Vayeshev Hashem melech la'olam. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's malchus is being revealed in an unfathomable way, because if he was a God that we could understand, he wouldn't be God, and I wouldn't be a person. I'd be God, and he'd be a person. We would be the same if I could understand him. Ili yadativ hayisiv. If I could understand him, I would be him. Rabbi Nachman says it's a big praise for Hashem when we have questions on Hashem. It's a praise for Hashem when a Jew has a question. And chas v'shalom that in a school they should discourage questions. That's of course we have questions, because he's Hashem, and we're limited, and he's beyond time and space. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu has an infinite insight into every single detail of everything, all the time. And we believe Hashem is good. We can't understand. We have questions. The questions demonstrate the gap between our limit and his limitlessness. That's what questions are for. Vayeshev Hashem melech la'olam. So this is a beautiful explanation of the Mizmor, but he hasn't yet gotten to the connection to Shabbos. Why does the Gemara say that because David HaMelech sang this Mizmor, now we have 7 brachas in Shemoneh Esrei of Shabbos? What's the connection? So listen to what he says. V'chein shleimus chayei ha'adam. And he says the same is true in our lives. Most of the time you look at a person and you see, what did they accomplish? What did they do? What does their portfolio look like? How many cars? How many houses? What's in their bank account? Because if I can see what appears to be shleimus, so then I say, good, this is constructive tikkun. It seems that you put in work and you got something out of it. That's the way that we ordinarily think and function. Shleimus chaya adam nikeres hi ba'avoda uv'maisa, working, accomplishing. But v'hamenucha, when there's a lull in a person's life, or a person needs to take a little bit of a break sometimes, it looks to a person that looks at the world through those eyes. It's like, It's a waste. It's wasteful. It's a waste of time. Putting your feet up, slacking off, laziness, not constructive, not productive. Aval be'emes, says Rav Kook, but don't you understand? Hamenucha hamuscheles is a very beautiful terminology. Hamenucha hamuscheles, which means the intelligent, conscious taking of breaks. And there's actually scientific studies and major companies, Google, that are what's the word? They're making it compulsory. They're instituting breaks, more breaks than just lunch break, because they find that it makes people more productive, not less. And the world is moving toward a place of understanding that quality is more significant than quantity. And that's a geulatic perspective. Because quantity is the guf, quantity is physicality. It's everything that I can measure and count. That's quantity. Quality is neshama. And as we move toward a Mashiach-oriented world, we start to develop different eyes. And I keep going back to education. When schools will value not marks on tests or how many black Gemara learned or how much shuckling or the things that we can see on the outside, but they'll begin to value effort, intentionality. They'll begin to value inwardness, sensitivity, focus, the things that are harder to measure, admittedly, but the actual important things, the things that actually mean something. So everything will look very different in our communities. Everything will look very, very different. We develop different eyes to evaluate people. And I'll tell you, they're not eyes of evaluation. They're not eyes of evaluation, right? Eyes of evaluation mean to say that I evaluate based on what I see. And then I can look at one person and evaluate him, and look at another person and evaluate him. A person that lives life with this kind of perspective, there's value everywhere. Every person exists within their own orbit. Every person is precious. Precious. Every individual is precious. Precious in their journey, in their circumstance, v'chule. So it's a different perspective that as we move toward the Geula, we need to begin to adapt. We need to begin to adapt. So this is Mashiach eyes, a whole different thing. Aval be'emes, going back inside, hamenucha hamuscheles, conscious menucha, hi amateres eshleimus kol hamaisim. It crowns all of the effort. Umachsheres, and it enables as kol ha'pu'ulos litu'udasan. Otherwise, it's just chaos, and it's just doing all the time. But if there's never a break, and if there's never moments of stillness, you know this in your work. If it's just so, then you become, crazily enough, you become less productive. Even though on the surface it looks like you put in that many more hours, if you're exhausted and you're not getting sleep at night, which is a very good thing, by the way. Yes, to sleep at night, but which is a very good example. Because it mamish makes a difference. People think, so I'll just burn the candle on both ends. The quality of the work is incomparably less than if we would get the requisite, whatever it is, for each of us to bump it up another half hour, another hour. Even though it seems like you're getting a later start or you're going to bed earlier, you get that much more quality in terms of your presence of mind, your mental health, how much focus you're able to give things with how much yishuv hadas. This is very important. Very, very important. And now he says, Uvashkafas hatachlis. And when it comes to awareness of what the ultimate goal of all of this is, Hamizgales b'shvisas hamaisim b'shvi'i. He says all of what we've just said now is wrapped up into our not working on Shabbos. That's what Shabbos is. That's what it means. Shabbos is the Yoima Dinishmasa, which we say so often. It's the day of the soul. Because on Shabbos, a person will look at Shabbos and say, hey, it's wasteful. The guy's not at work, the guy's not producing, the guy's not making the world any better, etc., etc., etc. And that's true in a quantitative sense. But qualitatively, this is exactly the message of Shabbos. This is exactly the message of Shabbos, that sometimes things are contributing to productivity in ways that go beyond what the eye can assess and see and understand. Sure, Hashem created the world in 6 days, but the crowning glory of it is not the quantitative accomplishment of how many plants and how many animals and how many rocks and how many, etc. The crowning glory is Shabbos. Shenasa b'sheishis meyamim, right? The whole creation The main thing is Niskanu Shiva de Shabbata. Kadosh Baruch Hu established the seventh day, Shabbos. Lahayra is to teach Shemenuchas HaShabbos Mishameshes, that the peace of Shabbos serves Loirak Bibatala Beheder Malacha, not simply as a day where we don't work. That's not the Nakuda. Ki im lahakafas lahafakas tachlis shleimus haseichel v'hamidas b'kirvas elokim v'toiv dracha, to give us the capacity to bring to actualization within our resting, which means within our carving out an island of stillness, to focus on what really matters, which is the inwardness, which is the kavana, which is what we began with, all the different kavanas of this mizmar. That's the most important thing. Shabbos teaches the lesson that's being communicated in this very mizmar. David HaMelech is teaching us Kol Hashem, Kol Hashem, Kol Hashem. The voice of Hashem is not only when you can look with your physical eyes and see tikkun, and see accomplishment, see building, construction, development. Kol Hashem is sometimes the erasure, the destruction, the eradication, the clearing of a field, the demolition of a structure. Sometimes, crazily enough, that carries within it an even deeper wisdom, that manifests in our lives, says Rav Kook, not in destroying things per se, but in controlled, in controlled explosions. What are they called? The controlled with dynamite sticks, controlled demolitions, meaning making space in our lives to be a little bit Shabbostic during the week also, and during the Zman also. Consciously, it's not hefkerus. It's not. He doesn't want to encourage laziness. He says menucha hamuscheles. Says Rav Kook, this is the connection between this mizmar and Shabbos, and that's why there are 7 koilos, because it's Keneged Shabbos, which is the 7th day, and that's why there are 7 brachas in Shemona Esrei on Shabbos Keneged these 7 koilos of this mizmar, because it's ba'omek the same message. That however much we thought the 6 days of the week gave us, Shabbos gave us more. Whatever we thought our productivity in the world during the 6 days of the week gave the world, sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu pushing the pause button on some of our ambitions, sometimes that's even contributing to a greater degree of productivity than we could have had otherwise. And that's Rav Kook's amazing understanding of this mizmar in the context of Shabbos. And just going back to the midas, and with this we'll end this segment, but going back to the midas that we looked at this chart, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hoid, Yisod, Malchus, all these different, I see actually that the word Hoid should have been bolded, and it's not. And it's apropos to the midah of Hoid that it's not bolded. Sorry, it says I don't need bold, Maybe I even bolded it and then I printed it out and it's like, no, I don't need it. But that's the midah of Hoid, right? But you look at these midas and you say, I don't know how productive I was with these midas during the week. Maybe something got in the way and I wasn't feeling so much ava for another Jew, for Hashem. Or despite my best efforts, I didn't feel as much hope in the midah of Netzach as I thought that I might want to. And I felt discouraged and I gave up. Shabbos teaches me that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the show. And sometimes, I'm surprised he actually didn't quote this Mamar Chazal, it's Gemara and Gittin, coming up now, Daf Yomi, Bitula Shel Torah Zuhi Kiyuma. Sometimes it's the bittul of Torah, crazily enough, that actually leads to the kiyum of Torah. And that's the chizik. We come into Shabbos, we review the midas, and when we remind ourselves of what this mizmar is coming to say in the context of Shabbos, and we say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm accepting in this moment, everything is from you, and I'm starting again. I'm building now. Thank you for clearing space. Now I'm building an even bigger house. Okay, we should be zeicher to that. Thank you. Next week we'll do Ana B'Koyach. Not next week. Next week we have Wednesday night, Chana for Shavuos at Jewish Futures, for those who weren't here in the beginning. I'm going to send a link to the group if you can register, very important. And mamish be there, bring your friends. It's going to be something very special. And then Thursday night is Shavuos, so Be'ezer Hashem the following week. If the Chaver can help to set up for bringing.